Okay, on the bench here we have a TRS Challenger. This is a model 1400. This was TRS's big box base station, AM sideband radio back in the day. Very nice radio. Customer sent this to me. He had changed all but two of the actually three of the electrolytic capacitors. Two of them he didn't have, I'm assuming, and the third one, yeah, we'll get to that. But for those that have never seen this, one thing you'll notice, that actually this has two kind of unique features to this radio. One is the receive light. Notice we're in receive right now, but the receive light is not on. Now, if anybody, unless the skip just rolled down the hill. Oh, okay. You see, the intensity of the receive light changes with the intensity or power of the incoming signal. So you can actually see it will get dimmer and brighter. Kind of a unique feature to this radio. You don't really see that on anything else. It's actually a very simple circuit. I mean, how it could, honestly, it could be added to any radio. It's just they went that, you know, that is an extra expense though, and this was not a cheap radio back in the day. Like I say, this was their flagship radio, I guess you could say. Not that TRS made many radios, but they did make very good radios. Another thing that's kind of unique to this, actually, let me get the light was flashing because I hadn't actually set the clock. But something that's kind of unique, very unique to this radio, it's not that it has a clock. And it's not that it has a seconds button, but it's what happens when you push that seconds button. Now notice what the time is, 2:38. Watch that last digit, 8. 8, 10, 11, 12, okay. When you push the seconds button, so you have normal clock display, the last digit is 8, or 38 minutes. This is now the last digit of the minutes, and then shows the seconds. I'm not sure what useful feature that really has, in all honesty, but I'm assuming TRS just kind of went, our clock IC has a seconds provision, so why don't we use the damn thing? But they didn't have enough room to stick in enough digits to add, hours, minutes, and seconds, so they just added a button so you can switch. So if you need a seconds timer, it has it. Only modification it looks like has ever been done to this radio is those annoying blue LED lights, which I actually had to move those a little bit. They were crammed in. The left side of the screen was just a bright blue ball of light, and the right side didn't have anything on it really. This also has dual filters for the audio, so this is hooked up. Now on some radios, these are hooked up fairly close to the speaker or audio after the audio amplifier. Actually, in this radio, the high and low filters are extremely early. Actually, they're at the very beginning of the audio stage. So after your signal's been demodulated, it's gone completely through the receiver circuit. It comes down, passes through the filters, which are nothing more than capacitors. One has a, the high has a ceramic capacitor on it. The low has an aluminum electrolytic capacitor on it. And either drops them, and then from that capacitor to ground, to either filter in or out highs or lows. So get somebody to talk here. But you can see it actually makes a good noise blanker, especially the high switch. Always got to be 5 people talking at the same time. Now, in my opinion, the high is way too high. Probably unusable, actually. And that depends on your hearing. Now, if you have hearing problems, actually, that switch may actually come in handy because it really exemplifies the highs. The low switch is effective. Now, both of these, actually, with both of these out, it really cuts out a lot of your static, wash, background noise. But for a good sound, I think it sounds best with the low switch pushed in, because with it out, it's actually just a little bit too much bass. There's not very many mids. With the low pushed in, it gives you a little bit more mids, and it sounds a little bit more realistic. Just gives you a little bit more depth of voice. Otherwise, fairly standard SWR calibrate and calibrate control, A&L noise blankers, dimmer, RF gain. Now, a couple of these control. Let's see, it's this one and I think the volume. Yeah, the volume and the RF gain, very unique to this radio. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it or not, but they kind of ratchet. Actually, you can't hear it with that one, but if you can hear that as I turn it, it actually clicks to you see the dots across the display or around the faceplate there. It actually clicks, and all it is, if you look on the back side of the controls, there's actually a bunch of slots in the back of it, and they put a ball bearing and a spring on the inside, but it goes click, 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 click. I don't know what the use of that is, because it doesn't have one on the squelch, it doesn't have one on the calibrate or the dimmer, but it has it. It's one of those things it has. I don't know why, and it's not like it's not like it limits your control. You can put it up, anywhere, in between those slots. So you're not stuck with just a couple positions. But any case, it's been completely gone through now. I did change those 3 electrolytic capacitors that needed to be replaced. Has had a full transceiver alignment done to it. Completely modification free now, with the exception of, let me turn it off because they're just going to kill the camera. These blinding ass blue LEDs. Like I say, I can't stand blue LEDs. But now, originally these brackets were down here. Like I say, the LEDs were actually touching the backs of the displays, and yeah, it looked like crap. So these were readjusted for a little bit better, more even light, across the backs of the meter faces. I did have to replace the SWR meter. Actually, here is the old one right here. Yeah, there's no meter face backing in it anymore because I had to use that in the meter I replaced it with, because I couldn't find any of the meters like this with only the SWR, but I had lots of them with the SWR modulation. So basically the same. Had to modify the bottom of it a little bit because this meter movement is different. But yeah, it's free, but it's burned out. Yeah, it doesn't work. So that has been replaced. Internally, say down here's your clock board, big clock IC. Nowadays we can do that with a little microscopic dot. Something that's kind of rare on these. And like I say, I'm not going to say this was a no expense spared radio, because it wasn't. But they did go, several extra steps on this thing. There are things they didn't really have to do, and they did. One of them was dual filter cap. Well, actually, you can't see them because the camera's not up far enough. One of them is dual filter caps. Originally, it was these two 4700 microfarads that were in there, which is all it really needs. Normally I would upgrade power supply capacitors. I wouldn't have had to in this because it has these two big ones to start with. The problem is modern 4700 microfarad capacitors are only about that big around. So, and those mount the mounting brackets down there, so they wouldn't work. So it now has two 10,000, so instead of having, 9,400 microfarads of total power supply filter capacitance, it now has 20,000. So definitely got plenty of capacitance there. Power supply. I'm not going to say it's unique. I have seen it in a few other radios, but it is rare. is the style of transistor they used. If you can see, normally you'd have, your transistor down here with a heatsink tab sticking straight up and a screw through it. Notice this looks more like, well actually I think that's what that transistor is meant for, is audio amplifiers, but transistor's a transistor, it doesn't know what it's being used for. But notice it has the tab with a screw on each side. It is a little dim in there. Give you a better view. There you can see it. With a nice big honking heatsink on it. That's one thing I'll say, man. Like I say, it's a lot of aluminum here. You just don't see stuff like that today. And it's been on for a while. It's barely even warm to the touch. Now the bridge rectifier, on the other hand, which is down here, did not have this heatsink on it. It didn't. I wouldn't say it got hot, but yeah, it was pretty warm. In a lot of radios, you'll see, not a lot, but in several of them over the years I've seen, well, they'll just stick a piece of L-shaped aluminum on top that acts kind of a little bit of a heat sink. I'm one of those people, cool semiconductors are happy semiconductors, and they last a really long time, so the more heat sink the better, kind of the same principle of what they thought here. Well, I did that to the bridge rectifier. So this is nothing more than a PCB mount heatsink for a standard transistor. Just pull the two mounting ears off the bottom of it. It already has a hole that's already drilled. So, all I had to do was pull the bridge rectifier out, stick a screw up through the bottom side, and stick this on there. So now it's, and instead of now being right on the borderline of warm to hot, it's barely even warm. So that greatly is reducing the temperature of that. This is a dual circuit board layout as far as the actual heart of the radio is concerned. We're not counting the clock and other boards. But it has the main board, and this is your PLL board. Actually, it's PLL and mic amplifier circuit. Because actually the microphone amp circuit is over here. The beginning stages of it. So this radio runs 5 crystals. There's 3 of them located on this board, and then there's another 2 sideband crystals. Light out here again. They're hidden back here in the back with 2 trimmers, trimmer for each one, but there's 2 crystals back there. Good receive, good sideband radio, honestly, like most of your old radios. I know a lot of people will argue, oh, Myra, this radio's better than that one, mine's better than yours. Yeah, honestly, people, most of these radios, if you measure sensitivity, adjacent channel rejection, most things you can measure, honestly, they're all so damn close. It really doesn't honestly matter. One of the main reasons is, back in the day, pretty much all of your radios had one of these, a big crystal filter. That's something you just don't see. I can grab a newer style and show you. This is what you're going to find in all of your newer radios, okay? And look at the size of that. Yeah, it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, take about 4.5 of these to make up one of these old ones. But the reason they use these nowadays and not those is expense, how much they cost. But like I say, that's what gives most of your older radios, your 70s, 80s radios, some maybe into the early 90s, but yeah, after that they pretty much went to these things. But that's what gives these things such good receive. This was a bit of a nightmare, somewhat. These boards, it's not too bad if you're the first person to work on them and you know how to. If someone tried to do an alignment on one of these and didn't know what they were doing, you're in for a horror show. And why I say that is, every single transformer in these radios is sealed. Matter of fact, if you look down here at these transformers, you can see they all have that brown Sony Bond goop on it. Yes, they glued in every single transformer in this radio. Not just these, even these coils in the transmitter circuit. Anything that's adjustable in this that has wire wrapped around it, so basically anything other than a trimmer potentiometer was sealed with that glue. The big problem with that is, inside of these transformers, you basically have a plastic tube. it has 4 little nibs of plastic that stick out around the inside diameter of that tube that run from top to bottom. That's what the threads of these ferrite cores actually bite into and thread into when they go down in. The problem is that in between those nibs then there's a little bit of space. So when they pour this damn glue on there, it oozes down inside in between the threads and the inner wall of that tube. And yeah, it may have been fine to get out maybe the first year, but after a few decades of this stuff getting hard and brown and starting to harden up, I shit you not, I actually worked on, it wasn't a TRS Challenger, but another radio with basically the same board in it one time, and every single core was cracked. I mean every core. The large ones, the small ones, the ones on the PL. I had to remove every single transformer from in the radio. There's an easy way to prevent that. Solvent, okay? It's what I use. I use this stuff for a lot of things, but it's basically acetone. Now, it does have 2-lone-butyl acetate and ethyl acetate in it, but the main ingredient, acetone, nail polish remover, okay? What you do is, and it took me, I don't know, somewhere between a half hour and 45 minutes to get all of these cores freed up. Take your little straw, put a little bit on the end of it, you come down in, and not a lot. You don't want to flood it, because remember, acetone, man, it'll dissolve anything it comes in contact with. So, just a little bit. You just want to dampen the top of the crate. And I usually, I'll do all of these in here, which are part of the receiver and the transmit circuitry, but I'll come in and I'll do all these small ones here, go back to the back, start over again, apply it, and go through and do that a few times, and you'll actually see that goop as it softens up. It starts to swell, get bubbly and curly. And then come in with your alignment, and don't, for God's sakes, don't use one of these. I use these all the time for aligning radios, but never ever when you're trying to get one of these cores loose. Once it's freed up and easily turns, yes, you can use these. But until then, use a plastic tool, because if you use one of these, I can guarantee you're going to break them. But come in with your plastic tool, and the whole idea is, if you twist the end off, matter of fact, I think I need to fix, yeah, this end's just about twisted off, and I did that in this radio. That's the whole idea. I'll twist the tip off of this thing before that core cracks. So that's just a tip. Now, this radio, normally, if you were to crack a core, you would have to remove the transformer from the radio to get in from the underside, because there is a mirror image of the top, that has the alignment, the slot in it. The bottom of the core looks exactly the same. So normally you'd have to take the transformer out to get in from the underside to back it out. This radio actually has, from the factory, a hole underneath the dead center of every one of these. So if you did break it off, you could get in from the underside to back it out. But like I say, it's a time-consuming process, but take your time. Because if you crack all those cores, you're screwed. I mean, it's just a lot more time to get them, to get them extracted then. So take your time. So there you go. There's the inside. It's a good receiving, transmitting radio now. Wanted to show this. I don't know if there were any videos of these up on YouTube, so I don't know if anybody had ever seen one of these. Nice radios, good-looking radios. One thing, actually, and one last thing that's kind of unique to these radios also was the speakers. Just put the factory top cover. There's the bottom side of the top cover right there. It's got 2 speakers, yeah. So here's another thing that's kind of fairly unique to these is it has dual speakers. So yeah, you can get lots of sound out of one of these things. So there you go. There's the TRS Challenger 1400. Oh, and for you fans of on-air lights, yes, this has has the on-air light. Let's see if any skip's still coming in. A little bit. It comes and goes. It's the middle of the day. Okay, so there you go. Just a little show and tell of a TRS Challenger base station.